Chapter 24, Skeletons. Brock, all I can say is I'm sorry over and over. I'm sorry, and I'm sorry. I know this is going to be bad. Wisteria raced up the front porch steps and threw her arms around Brock, squeezing him like a plush doll. Irk! Too tight! Wisteria loosened her crushing grip and rubbed her cheek where it had been in contact with Brock's chest. Ow! You wearing that switch necklace? Something's pointy under there. Yeah, I wear it every day. What's up? I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I wasn't thinking, that's the problem. But, you know I wouldn't do anything to hurt you on purpose, right? No, said Brock. I mean, yeah, I know you wouldn't, but slow down for a sec. Take a breath. Let's get inside the house and tell me what's going on. Okay, Wisteria said breathlessly. The banner looks great, by the way. It was Renault University's spring break, and Wisteria had just returned for the week. She'd called Brock early Sunday morning and insisted upon meeting, going on and on about something she'd supposedly done, but refusing to give details. She was talking quickly, jumping randomly from topic to topic. Brock had never seen her like this before and was beginning to suspect she was manic, but he wasn't sure if it was okay to ask her outright about her mental state, so he just hung on for the ride. Wisteria had already lit a cigarette and inhaled deeply before Brock could even enter and get the door closed behind them. You can't smoke in here, man. Go down to the basement. What? Why? You never had a problem with it before. There's a baby. His mom will kill me. Brock grabbed Wisteria by the elbow and guided her down the stairs. It's so creepy down here, Wisteria said. You remember when I had to break in through the cellar door? You left it open for spooky? There were all these noises and shadows. Wisteria, Brock said. Focus. What did you do exactly? Wisteria took another drag from her cigarette and started to cry. I told my dad all about you. He asked me a bunch of questions during dinner when I got back on Friday, and I thought he was just being nice, like showing interest in my life and my friends, but I didn't know that Reverend Cleghorn was running for mayor, and I think he just wanted to find out a bunch of stuff that he could use against you in the campaign, so now he knows. Maybe he was just curious. What did he ask about? Everything. He was like, hey, how's your friend Brock doing? He came to see me at my office, seemed like a nice guy, and all that sort of thing. Uh-oh, well, now I know he's up to something. When I went over to his office, he got mad and threw me out on the street. Wisteria's eyes got wide. I remember thinking that it was just really unusual because he normally doesn't care about anything I do or any of my friends, and I felt like there was something I wasn't getting, but I also thought it was nice of him to make an effort for once. Oh, God, did I ruin everything? Relax. Tell me exactly what he asked about. Wisteria exhaled a cloud of blue smoke. Let's see, he asked how old you are, he asked if you went to college, he asked about what you did for work, and then he wanted to know why you quit an engineering job for a house cleaning gig, and that brought up the panic attacks. He wanted to know all about those, and whether or not you went to church, and your parents, where are they, what do they do, are you married, ever had any trouble with the law, and then he asked if you'd ever held public office before since you're running for mayor and all. Brock slumped back against the washing machine. He seemed to be deflating. I mean, he asked this stuff like he was just a concerned father, vetting his daughter's friends or whatever, just making sure she's safe. And I told him lots of good stuff about you, too. How you take care of Spooky, and how you volunteer in the community, like with the cemetery, and how you want to honor your friend by continuing his work, and what a great guy you are, and how you keep me out of trouble. But I don't think he cares about any of that. Brock sighed. It's okay. It's okay, he said, bobbing his head and trying to give the impression that he had everything under control, even though his mind was churning like the washer's spin cycle. Remember, the main point of this whole running for mayor thing is to keep my thoughts off the negative, bad stuff, right? Maybe, but I still want you to win, Wisteria cried. I don't want Reverend Cleghorn to be the mayor. I want historic districts and old buildings and cycling paths and all the other stuff you talk about. Make this town a place where people like to live, with personality and quirks and stories and ghosts. Okay, Brock said. I am going to try to win, but one step at a time. Wisteria dropped her cigarette butt on the cement floor and ground it out beneath the heel of her boot. Did you get all your signatures? She asked. Brock nodded. Kurt helped. Monday, I'll get those turned in, with the official form and the $200 processing fee, and then I'll be on the ballot. Then I can worry about the campaigning. Good, Wisteria said. She still looked upset, though. She was staring down at her off-white pioneer dress with arms folded over her chest. Hey, Brock poked her in the ribs. It's okay. Maybe it'll turn out to be nothing. He decided to change the subject. I saw your Cupid thing in the paper. Girlie showed me. Wisteria brightened a little. Yeah, I was glad it turned out so well, and nobody even figured out it was me. Made me wish I could do something like that. I don't think I'd have the courage to stand in the middle of campus, though. Start small. Do something nice for one person. That's what I did. It gets easier and easier. I don't know, Brock said. I know it's irrational or whatever, but I'd be afraid of people's reactions, like they might think I'm creepy. Get over it. What are you going to do when you're mayor? You'll have to interact with people all the time. Helping is your whole job. Do it. Practice. When Brock returned from the courthouse on Monday, now an official candidate for mayor of the city of Broadacre, there was a party rollicking on the front porch of his home. It was certainly warm enough for an outdoor gathering. Though March weather in Indiana could be bitter, it was actually the first day of the year Brock left his coat hanging on its peg before he left for a walk through downtown. Kurt had dragged a rocking chair outside and sat strumming his guitar and singing. Christy and Albert claimed the other patio chairs. Beckett was on his mother's knee, exuberantly shaking a wooden maraca to his own rhythm. No one seemed to mind. Even Denny was around, propped against the house and drinking from a brown glass bottle. Wisteria and Mike Stubblefield were sitting on the half wall, each leaning back into a porch column, facing one another. It had been a while since Brock had seen Mike around, which he attributed to jealousy. And he couldn't blame the guy. Wisteria wanted to spend a lot of time with Brock when she was home. Maybe too much. Plus, it was known that Mike was trying to cozy up to Robert Hackett now that he had graduated from college. Probably angling for a job, Brock thought. Or wanting to get into Dad's good graces when the time comes to ask for his daughter's hand in marriage. Wisteria waved. Are you in? She shouted. Brock gave her a smile and a thumbs up. Closer now, he could see other familiar faces of people spilling out the front door, down the steps, milling about in the yard. Irv Hetfield, who had helped out with the cemetery, and his daughter Darla. Girlie McClure, Constance Shepard, another cemetery volunteer. Gregory and Caroline Truax. And there were others that he didn't recognize, had never seen before. Someone had hung an American flag from the edge of the porch roof and wound strings of Christmas lights around the columns, fat, clear globes that dazzled. There were more people inside the house, chatting in the front room. I'm gonna guess. Everything is this lady's doing? Brock pointed at Wisteria. She threw up her hands. I just invited a couple of friends over to your house. It got a little bit out of control after that. Albert got beer for everyone. I'm drunk as a skunk, Albert croaked. Kurt was motioning toward Brock. Get on up here, dude. I wrote a song for you. Caroline Truax popped her head into the front room and called, He's here. Come on, guys. Kurt played a tuning chord on his beat-up acoustic. Original campaign songs are a bit of Americana that's fallen out of fashion since the early 1900s or so, but Brock gets such a boner for old stuff that I thought I'd see if we can't resurrect the tradition. A laugh went up from the crowd as Kurt began to strum a bluegrass-type riff. Then he sang. The call went out across this land to find a great American. One man stood, answered the call, he'll be the best for one and all. Hey, hey, vote DeKalb. He's Brock DeKalb, the hero of the common man with lots of love. For all that's old, forgotten too, he'll clean it up and make it new. Hey, hey, vote DeKalb. Patch up our streets and help the poor, dry every eye forevermore. And when men come to tear it down, he'll save the history of our town. Hey, hey, vote DeKalb. One man stands in our hero's way, Terry Cleghorn, and I must say, though I'll have to pay the piper, heard he smells like dirty diaper. Hey, hey, vote DeKalb. I'd better run, so on that note, the time will come, get out the vote. Go check the box beside the name of the man who's gonna save the day. Hey, hey, vote DeKalb. Kurt struck one final triumphant chord as the gathered crowd started to whoop and holler. Brock was blushing like crazy, but his dark complexion hid it well. He was thankful for that. Kurt put out a hand that Brock shook while grinning through his embarrassment. Speech! Speech! A man that Brock couldn't quite recognize was shouting from the back. Who are all these people? Brock whispered. A lot of them signed your ballot petition, Kurt said. Wisteria sent the word out. These are your people. Bring the fire, dude. It was time for Brock to find out how well all those speech and debate team meets in high school would pay off. He raised a hand and turned to face the crowd. Wow, you guys kind of caught me off guard. The crowd quieted and there were a few laughs. But thanks. Thanks for coming out. It means a lot to me to see everyone. And now this whole running for mayor thing seems so much more real all of a sudden. More laughs. Brock continued. I'll keep this brief and then we can get back to the beer. I haven't always been into historic preservation. My friend Zane was always the one concerned about losing our past. He died last year. Many of you may know. So I'm sort of picking up where he left off. This is my tribute to him. If I'm elected... When? Called Wisteria. When I'm elected, thank you. When I'm elected, I'm going to work hard to make Broadacre a town we can all be proud of. I'll set up historic districts to preserve the character of our neighborhoods. We'll designate structures of historic importance and offer tax deductions to the owners so they can be improved rather than demolished. But it isn't all about the past. I'm also looking toward the future. I'll start updating the zoning plan for our city to encourage mixed-use development. You'll be able to live near the places you work, buy groceries, and get your hair cut. We'll also be working on implementing complete streets projects in many areas of downtown. Bike, walk, drive, ride the bus, the choice is yours. It'll bring people together. You'll pass friends on the sidewalk. You'll get to know people in your own neighborhood. Car ownership won't be a necessity anymore. And Broadacre is going to be a real community again. Of course, my ideas aren't the only ones that matter. If anyone has questions or concerns, I want people to let me know. Feel free to come talk it over. You know where I live? You can come to my house. Ring the doorbell. Within reason, I mean. There's a baby living here, so try to show up at a decent hour. I think that's about it for me. Now we just have to make sure everyone gets out and votes in November. It's going to be a fight, so let everyone know you're voting for Brock DeKalb. I really, truly appreciate your support. Thank you. Brock accepted a beer from Denny as he walked down the steps into the swelling crowd. It looked like more people were just wandering in from the street. Brock twisted off the bottle cap and spent the rest of the afternoon talking over ideas with people. By the time he fell into bed that evening, Brock was exhausted. But it was a good kind of tiredness, the type that comes from work and accomplishment. He drifted off into a deep, peaceful sleep with Spooky curled between his legs. Unfortunately, Brock's feelings of peace and accomplishment didn't last long. Despite his wishful thinking, that information Wisteria shared with her father hadn't disappeared. In April, a reporter from the Broadacre Sun and Herald called, wanting to discuss the campaign for an upcoming article on the mayoral race and hear Brock's perspective on some charges leveled by Reverend Cleghorn. The reporter was some new guy, not Kenneth Ball. Warren something or other. Brock didn't catch his last name. So this could be a historic election, Warren was saying. Broadacre's first black mayor. What do you think about that? Have race relations advanced to the point where people could vote for someone like you? Someone like you, Brock thought. It didn't surprise him. Casual racism didn't catch him off guard anymore, but it set a poor tone for an interview. Brock took a half moment to compose himself before continuing. I sure hope so. Hadn't really thought about it all that much, actually. The color of my skin is incidental. I wasn't even going to bring it up. But you know people are going to find out. If they know, they know. And I'm running on the strength of my ideas, not my race.
And it'd be historic for other reasons, too.
I'm not following you.
How old are you?
I'm 25.
You'd also be the youngest mayor Broadacre's ever had.
Again, I'm not really interested in making a big deal out of that. I'm not running to be the youngest, or the tallest, or blackest mayor. I want to make the city a better place. Mayor Moon started out when he was 35, not that much older than me.
But do you think you have the life experience for that? The good judgment?
I wouldn't be running if I didn't think so. Brock was starting to get pretty irritated with this guy. He worked on scratching a gouge into his desk with a ballpoint pen.
A source of mine tells me that you have a history of mental illness.
Brock huffed. Mental illness? Who's your source?
I can't reveal that.
I used to have panic attacks, occasionally. Lots of people have them. It's under control, nothing that would interfere with my mayoral duties.
Mr. DeKalb, it may seem like I'm being hard on you, but that's my job. I probe, I question, I look at all sides of the issues, so the voters can make an informed decision.
Let's just get on with it. Brock heard Warren flipping a page.
I also understand that you're not a churchgoer. Do you believe in God?
Brock exploded. What does that have to do with anything?
It's an important issue to the voters. They want to know that their mayor is an upstanding, moral citizen.
You can be moral and upstanding without believing in a god.
So that's a no?
Brock thought for a moment. I believe in God, in a metaphorical sense.
How so?
To me, God is like a ghost. I don't believe in literal ghosts either, but sometimes the idea of a ghost can make you do things. Things you wouldn't otherwise do. A friend dies, you wonder if he's still out there, watching. You want to do something good for him, continue his work, keep his memory alive somehow. So you do that. Are you with me?
I'm listening.
Because you believed it, because you took an action based on that belief, the ghost becomes real. It had an effect in the real world. Whether or not it literally exists is irrelevant.
And that's like God somehow?
I think we make God real. Millions of people base their actions on what they believe, on their religions. Whether you want to call it feeling the spirit move, or your morals, or your conscience, that doesn't matter. There's something real there. I personally think it's just a good metaphor to help us understand something that's beyond our grasp. But sometimes metaphors can be just as real as anything else.
And you base your actions on what you think God or your conscience would have you do?
I try to be a good person. Try to help people when I can. Secret kindnesses, that sort of thing. Okay, maybe I haven't done any of those yet, thought Brock. But I will. I aspire to do them. That should totally count.
Interesting, said Warren. Okay, well, I'm just going to go ahead and put down no for churchgoer. Accurate?
Brock sighed. Sure, whatever.
Okay, so, trained as a mechanical engineer?
Yeah.
But you're not working in your field.
Look, Brock said, trying to hold it together. Whatever you've been told, it's true. I quit my engineering job, then I worked as a house cleaner. I cleaned out a hoarder's house, fixed it up, then I bought the house, and now I'm a landlord. Can we just skip ahead to the part where I tell you about my vision for the city?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Brock launched into his pitch on remaking Broadacre, but he got the distinct impression that Warren had already checked out. Brock had been going door to door for a few months, shaking hands, greeting potential voters, and pitching his ideas, when the article was finally released. Albert hobbled into the kitchen, where Brock was tearing into some French toast, and dropped a newspaper onto the table in front of him.
Better take a look, Albert said, easing himself into a chair. Christy turned from her cooking and leaned against the counter, where she watched Brock with a curious eye while he read aloud. Historic Mayoral Race Shaping Up by Warren Lowry, staff writer. Broadacre, Indiana. In November, the city will elect a new mayor for the first time in 50 years, and the candidates couldn't be more different. Reverend Terry Cleghorn has been head pastor of the First Church of North Broadacre for 4 years. Previously, he had been a pastor at Faith Christian Church in Killian, Ohio. His challenger, Brock DeKalb, owns a rental property on the city's north side. If elected, it would be a first for Broadacre in several ways. Mr. DeKalb would become the city's first African-American mayor, as well as its youngest ever. I'm not running to be the youngest or the blackest mayor, says DeKalb, 25. I want to make the city a better place. Reverend Cleghorn, 45, agrees that race shouldn't enter the picture. I applaud him for running and for starting this conversation. I don't think the decision should be based on race at all. I'm only worried about his lack of experience. He's young, he's never run an organization of any size, and frankly I'm concerned that he isn't a churchgoer. Having a mayor with a strong moral compass is important to the electorate, for good reason. I think God is a metaphor, DeKalb told the Sun and Herald. Brock slammed his fist on the table, making Christy and the silverware jump. I explained the whole God thing to him for about 15 minutes, and that's all he wrote? Reverend Cleghorn also alleges that DeKalb's history of mental illness could become a liability. The mayor has a big job. The city requires someone with all their faculties intact. DeKalb admits that he suffers from panic attacks, but says that they are under control. The candidates' platforms differ greatly. When I'm elected, says Reverend Cleghorn, we'll enact pro-business, pro-family policies. I'll dismantle legislation that has placed undue burden on the companies that employ the residents of our great city. And with the Lord as my guide, I'll continue to model traditional values for all. Christy snorted. Oh, he's just perfect, isn't he? I don't think I can read much more of this, Brock said. He turned the page and folded the newspaper back on itself. It goes on, glosses over my policies. Cleghorn gets some little jabs in there, how my ideas are going to restrict business. Oh, and I can't hold down a normal job, so I have to clean houses. Oh, don't worry about it, Brock, said Albert. It'll be fine. Kurt entered with Beckett, whom he placed into his high chair by the window. We had a good walk, he told Christy. I sound like an idiot, Brock grumbled. I don't see how I can recover from this. What's the matter? Brock handed Kurt the paper, which he skimmed. Ouch. That's not good, dude. I wonder how this is affecting my poll numbers. How do I even find out what my poll numbers are? Does the newspaper publish that? Kurt laughed. Poll numbers? There's no poll numbers. What do you think's happening here? You're in local politics. Nobody cares enough about the elections of some little podunk town in Indiana to do any polls. Well, how am I supposed to know if I'm winning or losing? You'll find out the day after the election. Brock leaned back and stared up at the ceiling, rubbing his neck. I think it's already over. Nah, said Kurt, just a low point. You can only go up from here. Kurt wasn't quite right about that, as it turned out. There was still farther to fall. During the summer, Brock carried on with his attempts to round up votes. It seemed to him that he must have covered 3/4 of the city already, but he was finding it harder and harder to interest anyone in his message. He often got no further than, Hi there, I'm Brock DeKalb, and I'm running for mayor, before the homeowner quickly told him that they weren't interested and closed the door in his face. His campaign signs and posters were disappearing too. Brock couldn't be sure if someone was taking them or if they were just blowing away, though he expected it was the former. And those promotional materials weren't cheap either. In a few cases, he noticed houses that once displayed Vote DeKalb 2002 signs in their yards had replaced them with Cleghorn for Mayor signs. Reverend Cleghorn had been holding small but growing rallies around the city. Brock even attended one of them, in disguise. The Reverend was going on about how he was answering God's call to lift up the people, and how he'd be their moral compass, a light in the darkness, and blah, blah, blah. He quoted a lot of scripture. The people ate it up. Brock had no idea how he would even begin to compete with that. Around the beginning of June, Denny fell behind on his rent payments. Brock reminded him about the money that was past due, gently at first, then more forcefully. Every day for 2 weeks he prodded. Then one morning, Denny didn't tromp downstairs for work, as he had nearly every weekday since his arrival. After lunch, Brock went upstairs to knock on Denny's door, and there was no response. Brock knocked again. Nothing. Brock opened the door with his master key and pushed it open. Everything was gone. Denny had apparently packed up and moved out sometime during the night. "Guess I'm out that $350, Brock told Kurt later on the front porch. Spooky was rubbing against his leg, begging for attention. "Yeah, so weird though. I heard nothing last night. You'd think packing up all his stuff would make some noise." Brock reached down and absently scratched the cat's head. Spooky was loving the weather. A warm breeze ruffled his fur and stirred his droopy whiskers. "I don't think he had much. Maybe a backpack and a duffel bag." "Gonna get another renter for his room?" "I'll see. Might take a while." "I can ask around," Kurt said. "I could know a guy at Robertson's Music who's looking for a room." He was sitting on the half wall, lazily picking notes on his guitar, without any apparent melody or rhythm. "So, what do you think about Christy?" "She seems nice, but she's so tied up with the baby all the time I haven't really gotten to know her very well." "There's a Pink Floyd cover band playing at a little bar downtown. You think she'd go with me?" Brock was surprised. Until now, he hadn't picked up any signals that Kurt was particularly taken with Christy. He grinned. "Yeah, man, I don't see why not. Ask her." "If she says yes, I'll babysit." "You're a good dude," Kurt said. "Where's Wisteria been lately?" "She's not coming back this summer. She did some kind of a study abroad program in Portugal. Might be around for a week or two before school starts again in the fall, but that's it." "Too bad." "Yeah, I get letters from her every now and then. She likes to handwrite things. No email." "Sounds about right," Kurt said. "It'd be cool if she was around for this mayor thing. Tell me what I should do. I feel like I need her support, but she's got her own thing going on, I guess." A long wail went up from inside the house. Beckett was awake from his nap. Kurt handed his guitar to Brock and stood, smoothing his wrinkled t-shirt. "I'm gonna go see what Christy says about the show." He took a deep breath. "I am a proud lion. I can do this." Later that evening, while Kurt and Christy were out at the bar, Brock was lying on the sofa next to Beckett in his crib. The kid made him nervous. Every little sound, every move could be some evidence of a problem. He'd heard of sudden infant death syndrome, babies falling out of their beds, and accidental suffocation. He'd never really been around children before, so this was a new experience, and it was nerve-wracking. Now Beckett was asleep, and Christy told Brock that he usually slept through the night without problems. But once he'd given the boy his bottle and put him to bed, he just couldn't stay away. He'd attempted to sit on the porch with a book, but it was impossible. Out there, he couldn't hear the sounds that might indicate something was wrong, even with the door slightly ajar. So he wheeled the crib out into the front room, turned the lights out, and tried to sleep on the couch. Brock tossed and turned for what felt like hours, but he must have finally drifted off, because he was awakened sometime later by a gentle shaking and someone calling his name. He rolled over and shielded his eyes against the bright lights. What's the matter?" "Wake up, dude. Somebody threw paint all over the banner." Brock rolled over and tried to come to grips with what he was being told, but there was a painful crick in his back from sleeping wrong that took precedence. Kurt was leaning over him, and he made for an odd sight. He was dressed up, which, in Kurt's case, meant jeans with no holes, sandals, and a crushed velvet magenta button-up shirt. Christy was behind him in strappy heels and a very short flowered sundress. "Can you get a flashlight?" Kurt was asking Christy as Brock tried to sit up. Outside, it was just as Kurt told. Huge splashes of bright yellow paint were splotched all over the Vote DeKalb 2002 banner. Quite a bit of paint had hit the house, too, maybe several buckets worth. "Did you see anybody?" Brock asked. "No, nothing." Kurt poked a glob of paint and examined his finger. "It's still really wet. Must have just happened." "People are idiots. Can't believe someone would do this," Christy said. "I can," said Brock. It felt like he was back in middle school all over again. This sort of thing would never end. The kids used to knock him down, take his books, and write on his things. Now they were older, but someone was here, trespassing on his property, damaging the house he owned. Had they been peering through the windows, stalking him, waiting until he fell asleep for the perfect opportunity? How long had this been planned? And would they come back? Were there even more destructive pranks in the works? Was someone going to set his house on fire next? The questions came hard and fast, and there were no answers. Only visions in Brock's mind of flames and catastrophe. He felt his throat getting tight. It was hard to suck in enough air to fill his lungs. He felt dizzy and put a hand against the old maple tree to steady himself. Boom. Just like that, the panic was back. "You okay, dude?" Brock shook his head and headed for the front steps. "You want help taking the banner down?" Christy asked. "Forget it," Brock said. "I have to go." Head down, he trotted into the house and headed upstairs to his attic room, leaving Kurt and Christy in the yard wondering what to do next. No one brought the newspapers to Brock anymore. He didn't seem interested in reading articles about the election any longer. The others generally leafed through the pages looking for relevant stories and summarized them for Brock while he ate his breakfast, head down and nodding slightly. News was generally negative. There were the occasional opinion pieces supporting Reverend Cleghorn as the most realistic choice in the race. Sometimes articles would comment on the size of crowds at the Reverend's rallies or the reserves in his war chest. The personal attacks were the worst. One morning in August, Christy sat across the table, breaking up a slice of American cheese for her son. "Don't bother reading the paper this morning. It's just more of the same." "Don't worry, I won't," Brock told her. "I think he spends more time talking about your morals or how young you are than he does about what he plans to do for the city." Christy wiped a long trail of saliva from Beckett's face with the back of her hand. "He's nothing if not professional," Brock shrugged. "If you consistently repeat the same things over and over, people will believe whatever. Zane used to rant about it in terms of advertising and public relations. They call it staying on message." "Well, it's just not Christian to be judging people like that." "I don't know. From the Christians I've met, I'd say that's about par for the course." Brock watched Christy's face fall, and for a brief instant, he wished he could take it back. "Brock, I'm not like that. I try not to be. Not all Christians are the same." Brock stared down at his cereal bowl and said nothing. "You never heard anything from Denny?" she asked. "Nope." "Got anybody else lined up for the room?" "Nah." Brock slurped the rest of his cereal milk and took the bowl to the dishwasher. "And it's stupid, too. If he'd just come talk to me, we could have worked something out." He headed for the front room, but stopped when Christy called his name. "Brock, can I talk to you about something?" He turned and folded his arms across his chest. "Yeah, what's up?" "What if I couldn't pay my own rent for a while?" Brock felt his stomach drop. First Denny, now Christy. He'd be out, what, $700? "I don't know. You think that's likely?" "Beckett's daddy, he gives us the money. Lately, he's been kind of an..." She whispered the word so Beckett wouldn't overhear. "Asshole." "He gonna cut you off?"
I think he might.
Brock closed his eyes. He didn't need this on top of everything else. If he lost the income from Christie, he'd be down to $300 every month for groceries and incidentals. He'd be only scraping by, and there wouldn't be anything left over for the campaign. He'd have to sacrifice signs, pamphlets, gasoline for travel around the city. Not that his campaign had been going anywhere lately. Maybe it's just time to drop it, he thought. He remembered the lean times when he and Zane were the only ones in the house, living on gas station sandwiches, not having any new clothes, without any sort of nest egg in case of an emergency. Brock didn't want to return to that way of living. I could put up flyers again, maybe have 2 more renters to fill Denny and Christie's rooms in a month or so. It wouldn't be easy, letting Christie go, though he knew going in that becoming a landlord would require some backbone and occasional tough choices. But the kid, he'd be throwing Beckett out on the street too. Kurt would never forgive me for that, especially now that this romantic thing with him and Christie was happening. Wistaria's words were always flooding into his mind at the most inopportune moments. He remembered her secret kindnesses, and her talk of starting small, with one person. But this was different, Brock thought. Secret kindnesses could be free. This was hundreds of dollars on the line, right? Reverend Cleghorn wouldn't let anything get in his way. Reverend Cleghorn would keep his eye on the prize and fight until he won. He was a winner. All that church sermon talk about forgiving our debts, well, that was nice, it sounded good, but when was the last time you heard of anyone canceling another person's debt in America? Even a Christian. Everyone understood that bills had to be paid or there were consequences. It was just the way of things. You can stay here, Brock said quietly, as long as you need to. In a flash, Brock had made up his mind. He didn't want to be anything like Reverend Cleghorn. He was determined to make true his statement to the newspaper reporter, that someone could be a good person, a moral citizen, without leaning on religion. This was his secret kindness, too, even though it was going to hurt. Brock was already starting to worry that he'd regret this, but the look of gratitude on Christie's face boosted his resolve. Her lip was quivering as she jumped up to give Brock a hug. She stopped short, seeing his expression, and touched his arm. Are you sure? I'd understand if you need to get somebody else in here. When Brock nodded his approval, Christie threw her arms around him. I'm going to keep doing the cleaning and the housework and cooking meals every day, I swear. I do love your breakfasts, Brock said. I have to run. You'll be around this evening? Brock nodded. I'll be back. There's more I have to tell you, but I'll be back. Brock spent most of the day in his room, reading a book with Spooky on his chest. Girl cat and boy cat wandered in and out. At one point, Brock took a nap with all 3 felines curled up beside him. A thunderstorm was blowing in, and anyway, he didn't feel like going out campaigning. It was kind of a downer day. Christie had been gone for hours. She'd taken Beckett and hadn't told anyone where she was going. Brock got a little worried about her when the sun went down and rain lashed the house. The walls swelled and creaked under attack from furious gusts of wind. Lightning flashed. The door banged open downstairs. Brock raced down 2 flights to find Christie, soaked, struggling to get Beckett into the house. Her eyes were red. Maybe she had been crying, but her whole face was wet, so it was impossible to tell. Maybe it was just the wind. Brock took the baby to give her a chance to settle in and compose herself. Boycat used the opportunity to sneak outside. He raced right back in when the rain drenched his fur, and Brock shut the door. Jesus, Brock said, what were you doing out there? Looks like you almost didn't make it back. I'm okay. Christie gave him a small, tired smile. I gotta get me and Beckett out of these wet clothes. You're not going back out there tonight, are you? She shook her head. Listen, tomorrow. Terry Cleghorn is holding a press conference at the courthouse. 10 a.m. You need to go. I don't want to hear that guy. It's important. Please? She took the baby and headed off to her room, quickly being enveloped by the darkness of the first floor corridor. I want to apologize to my supporters. I want to apologize to my parishioners. And I want to apologize to my family most of all. I let a lot of people down. I am ashamed of my actions. What I did was unacceptable. It would be improper for anyone to do what I did, but I am in a position of trust. I'm supposed to be a role model, a leader in the community. I can't take back what I did, but I will take steps to make amends. First of all, I'm asking for forgiveness from the God of all creation, from my wife, Elizabeth, from my kids, from those who trusted me. Secondly, I will be taking an extended leave of absence from my duties as head pastor of the First Church of North Broadacre. The associate pastors will run things in the meantime. The congregation is in their very capable hands, and I have absolutely no doubts that they will handle church business and services with grace and professionalism. Finally, I will be ending my bid to become the mayor of Broadacre. I love this city, but I need to take some time out to repair the relationship with my wife and my children. Running for office is a big task, one that absorbs the majority of my energies. But the people closest to me are most important, and I need to focus on them now. I appreciate everyone's support and understanding. Thank you, and God bless. Reverend Cleghorn didn't meet anyone's eyes as he walked away from the podium on the steps of the Broadacre courthouse. The cameras, the reporters, and the crowd all watched as he left, head down, in a dark sedan. The morning edition of the Broadacre Sun and Times told the rest of the story. Kurt handed the paper to Brock with a thumbs up as he walked through the front door. As Brock read the front page story, the anxiety rushed back into his brain when the ramifications of this latest news became clear. Yesterday, Christie had gone to the press and set into motion a chain of events culminating with the morning's press conference. She had previously been a member of the congregation at the First Church of North Broadacre. Christie and Reverend Cleghorn were involved in an illicit relationship. The Reverend was Beckett's father. She wanted to keep the baby. In order to maintain appearances, the Reverend paid her a set amount every month to ensure her silence and ended the affair. Now she'd blown the lid off. Brock guessed that it was just dumb luck, a complete coincidence that she'd turned up at his doorstep. And now he sat wondering, what did all this mean? Was he going to be the next mayor, now that his only opposition had dropped out? Would someone else step up? And if no one did, and he won the election, Brock should have been elated. But the sinking realization that he was on the verge of winning public office, of being in charge of an entire city, well, the thought terrified him. Maybe the confused, frightened look on Brock's face gave him away, or perhaps Kurt was just an old pro at understanding people. But Kurt seemed to understand exactly what Brock was thinking when he said, "You're not thinking of backing down now, are you?" "And what if I do? There wouldn't be any candidates left. Would they have some sort of special election? The ballot deadline already passed. Would they extend—" "Brock, you won. This is happening. The office is yours. And dude, you want to give up before you even start?" "I don't know. I don't know what I want." "Fame and fortune? Women throwing themselves at you?" Brock waved him off with a laugh. "How about a steady income? Health insurance? A big office at City Hall?" Brock looked up to the ceiling and shrugged. "You can honor Zane the way you want?" Kurt said. "That's all I really need, but the job comes with more responsibilities than that, I might freak out, melt down, or whatever. What if I screw up the whole city? Well, no one's going to fire you, for 4 years anyway. You're in charge. You can do whatever you want. You want to sit around your office all day and hand off responsibilities to other people? That's your call. Better than my old job where I had to fear the boss every day.